And that kind of gives way a bit to our approach, to the way that we want to take a look at video games. So instead of having this top-down approach saying, this is what we know about cognitive behavioral therapy, this is what we know about what we need to be teaching our children to cope with real challenges, and let's package it in this way, we take a bottom-up approach. And we say, kids are playing video games. It's happening. They're all playing them, and this is really a major aspect of the future. Let's really understand what's going on. The research out there has not looked at the real social implications of playing video games. And let's, again, take a socio-developmental perspective on this, on this whole new phenomenon that we've seen unfold in the past decade or two. Looking really at emotional problem-solving skills that are being developed, that are being cultivated by playing video games. So that sort of encapsulates our conceptual approach. And methodologically, what we really need to start doing is, first of all, longitudinal designs. If we want to talk about developmental effects, we want to talk about long-term effects like the general learning model wants to discuss, then we need to get a holistic picture of the way people, children, teenagers are developing over time. And secondly, we want to observe them in terms of real behavior. So these self-reports about the way that they interpret an event, we find to be quite shallow. It's about time that we really observe them and see what is happening over time. And that's sort of the methodological approach that I'm now going to also promote. Okay, so conceptually, what do I mean by kids are playing games, and we should look at the socio-developmental influence? Some statistics. By 21, the average person has played. Cool. The average person has played. That's cool. Has played 10,000 hours of games. We invest $3 billion on online games. Does anybody want to take a guess of the percentage of children between 2 years old and 17 years old in the United States that play video games at least 1 hour per day? So regularly gaming.
75.
75.
90.
90. You guys think that's high?
No,
The estimates are between 91 and 97%, actually. So, it's happening. I'm going to skip this slide. But that really begs a big question, ultimately, because, okay, they're dedicating all this time to playing games. What are they, what's really happening? Are they actually getting good at anything? Like, 10,000 hours by age 21? And an army of children, 91 to 97%. And what we want to advocate is this idea that they are developing in certain well-designed games.
What about games makes it impossible to feel that we can't achieve everything? How can we take those feelings from games and apply them to real-world work?
So I think anyone that has played a little bit of video games can quite relate to this phenomena of, it doesn't work out, am I just going to turn the thing off and walk away, or restart? And this is very powerful. And I think what Jane is onto, what we think Jane is onto, is something that has already existed in the research for quite some time. And that is an idea advocated by Carol Dweck. She's done a lot of work in education. This concept of the incremental theory of intelligence. And the basic concept here is that when children are growing up, they can come to perceive and understand intelligence in one of two possible ways. They can develop what's called an entity theory. That is, that they think that I have intelligence and that is it. It is fixed. It is what it is. And the other is an incremental theory of intelligence. Intelligence is something that can be cultivated. It is something that grows. It is something that needs to be challenged. And you can see this happening in classrooms, and you can see this with this questionnaire, for instance. And what happens with these different types of theorists, these children that are perceiving the way in which their own skills are in the real world? So if we look at an entity theorist, their concept is that intelligence is fixed. I'm a smart boy, then I'm a smart boy. When they take a test, for instance, and the test goes really poorly, what does that really signal to them? It doesn't signal to them, oh, I should get up and try again. Instead, it says to them, you weren't good enough. You're a smart boy, but you weren't smart enough. intelligence is what it is. And in that sense, failure is really speaking to their entire self-worth. On the other hand, if we look at the incrementalists, who are, in the end of the day, obviously do much better in life, they have this idea that their intelligence can be changed, it's malleable. And when they fail, instead of taking it as, I wasn't smart enough, it's, oh, I didn't try hard enough. Had I tried harder, I could have done it. And instead of failure attacking their self-worth, it actually is instigating them to get up and try again, dust themselves off. And in the end of the day, these entity theorists, what they're developing is a sense of learned helplessness. And on the other hand, the incremental theorists have this persistence in the face of failure, which is what we're trying to tap into. Methodologically, what needs to be done? I don't think that this needs to be so fleshed out. I think I'm really preaching to the choir here when I say that we need these longitudinal studies, we need random assignment, we need to have children that are playing games and not playing games and really observing them in context. So the way a study like this will look, I should say. We have people in a gaming context. We assign young, naive gamers to being able to play games for the next 6 months, not play games. And we, of course, have a holistic approach here, so we're looking at self-reports from them, their parents, their teachers, and their peers. And in addition to that, we're bringing them into the lab, observing them, and repeating this over and over again over a long period of time. And that way we get to really see the way in which these kids who have played games, and perhaps the ones that we're prescribing in our study, get influenced. Okay, so before I open up the floor to discussion, questions, and I'm also really interested in fresh ideas that you may have about video games. I mean, there's so many out there, so yeah. Let me just wrap up what I've covered today. So, first of all, the take-home message should be video games is a really broad term, and if we're going to talk about the influence of video games, we need to get very specific, at least on the level of a genre, but I think even more specifically in terms of the mechanics. What is the game actually doing? How is it engaging us? What are the ways in which people are achieving their goals in games? These are the ways that we need to be looking at video games, not as some monolithic structure. The second is that there are broadly 4 types of video game research. The first is that do video games have negative effects, and this is dominated by the idea that violent video games lead to aggression. The second is, well, what are the cognitive changes that we're witnessing in video by people engaging with video games and actually quite generally the multimedia of the modern world. The third is, why are people playing games? What are they getting out of it? So this sort of market research idea without looking at the causal effects. And how can we use video games as a medium to educate people? That's what's out there. The other thing I want you guys to take away is that general learning model looks a little bit oversimplified. So testing this idea of violent video games should be done in a better way. And our contribution today has been that we want to really promote the social awareness of the question. The question really should be, is it possible that video games are having positive social effects? This isn't on many people's minds, at least in the research world, and this is something that really should be out there. And of course, the only way to answer this question is following our methodological approach, taking longitudinal studies and having experimental designs. And thank you for your attention.